What's up YouTube? My name is Shana Karasi. Welcome back to my channel, and I'll be showing you how to create some key pieces in my vacay or staycay DIY series. In today's DIY tutorial, I'll be showing you how to create a Shana Karasify. Is that even a word? Cover up. So let's get into it.
Alright guys, so you'll need a see-through ruler, a curved ruler, a long meter ruler, paper scissors, pencil and eraser, tracing paper, as well as a master front bodice that you can find out how to make on YouTube. Just type it in, how to make a front bodice, and you should be able to figure out how to make it. Alright guys, first things first, we are going to start by tracing the shoulder point, the neckline, the center front, and we will go in on the shoulder point at 1 inch and the center front at 1 inch to create our banding at our front neckline. So at the shoulder point, you will be making a mark at the middle notch on the shoulder. You don't need your ruler, but I'm just using my ruler to make sure I'm on point. And at the apex point, you will be tracing the inner front leg of the apex, the bottom, as well as a bit of the center front. And you'll hold down your pencil on the apex point and pivot your block to the left to about 1.5 inches. And make sure to keep your block steady. And then you measure 1.5 inches and make your marking at that middle notch point. Then you'll make a marking beside that notch at 1.5 and make sure you mark the block as well as your paper. Then pivot the block to the left and match it up with that middle notch point. Draw a line from that middle notch point that you just matched up to the marking on your block, and then you make that mark from that point and then pivot again to match the middle point with that new marking. Make sure your block is steady. Then trace the bottom, the side seam as well. Trace it all the way down. And then from that marked shoulder point, draw the armhole, trace the armhole. So at this point we have the front silhouette of half of the bodice. So now we're going to draw a line from the first notch point to the apex, or from the apex to that notch point on the shoulder. Then I'm going to draw here another line. I didn't have to draw this line. I made a bit of a mistake, a boo-boo there. So we're going to draw the other line of that dart. And then this is going to be the middle piece. And then that's like one of the legs of the darts, the second dart. And then that's the second dart created. So at this point, we are going to be drawing in the guidelines for the front banding and drawing that front banding. So we're going in at 1 inch along the neckline. So as you can see, I'm going all along the neckline, creating the front neck banding. Keep in mind that this banding will be a separate piece from the actual bodice. So it will be traced out separately. So in this next step, we are creating the first slash line along the center front. And then we will also create another slash line from that midpoint on the bodice. And you can mark an X to indicate your slash lines so that you know when you're moving it, you know which line to trace. So we will be tracing out the center front on a separate piece of tracing paper over the paper to trace. Okay, so we're tracing along the neckline, that first slash line to create the first column. And sorry that it's not in the shot, but you'll also be marking the bottom as well, the bottom waistline. And then we'll be moving it across by 2.5 inches. Make a marking, measure it, make sure it's straight. And then we'll go ahead and trace that first slash line. Mark it on the bottom as well. And mark it towards the middle. You can kind of choose where you want to place that second slash line or the end of that slash line. It really doesn't matter, but just make sure that it's equal to the first. And then we're also going to shift the page over by 2.5 inches once again, and then create the third column at 2.5 inches. So yeah, just make sure that your tracing paper is steady and go ahead and create that third and final column. So I think at this point I realized I didn't do the banding. So at that armhole, we're going in at 1 inch at the side seam and 1 inch at the top shoulder. And as you can see, I'm just marking the guidelines at 1 inch around the armhole. And then you're gonna go ahead and make that guideline connecting all of those points, creating your armhole banding. So at this point we are going to draw the side seam, and keep in mind that these are going to be two separate pieces, the arm banding from the front bodice. So I'm just tracing the bottom, and just make sure that the point from the bottom of that banding on the side seam is 6 inches. So now we'll be creating the new neckline from that slashed and spread bodice. So you're going to start to connect from the second column, the front area of that second column, as I'm doing there, and just connecting it to the center front line. So with a smooth blended curve, use that curved ruler and make a blended line and blend any areas that do look jagged or a little off. So then we're going to go ahead and connect the shoulder point and blend that out as well to the shoulder and neck point. So use whatever rulers you need to make that line straight and blended to connect them. Now I'll be drawing the gathers along the shoulder and along the neckline to indicate gathers. And now we'll actually be smoothing out the bottom of the waistline at that 6 inch mark, and just make sure that you're blending it along the way with your ruler. Okay, and then we'll indicate gathers along the waistline as well. Alright, so at this point I'm tracing the center back, the back neck, the shoulder, and the front area of the dart, and then I'm going to pivot to close that dart and make sure it's centered, and then continue along with tracing that shoulder along with the back arm notches along the armhole, and just the armhole at that point. Okay, so as you can see, there is already a line drawn. I am erasing that line because the video wasn't in focus and it wasn't in the shot. So we will be pivoting that line so that we can continue with the rest of that line to create the back half at a 90-degree angle. Okay, so that is done. Make sure that it is 6 inches on the side seam, and there I go erasing again. So this will be the 90-degree angle line. So just make sure that angle is 90 degrees as I'm doing in this little box here. So at halfway down the center back, we are going to measure across 23.5 inches. Okay? So at this point, we will be creating a soft S-curve at that notch point. So I'm just going to be showing you how I'm creating that soft S-curve. There are no particular measurements per se to make this S-curve. It just needs to be proportioned. So just follow along how I'm doing it with the curved ruler, and it will give you an idea of what type of look for this back bodice area that you'll be looking to achieve. So you will be connecting this soft S-curve to that measurement mark that we made to the mid center back area at the 23.5 mark point. So just continue to curve along that area and just connect the guidelines that you had marked along that soft curve to create that soft curve, and continue towards the bottom of the center front past that mark, and keep it rounded as I'm doing here with the curved ruler. Alright guys, so this is the final step of the drafting process. I wasn't going to show you guys how to cut the patterns out or how to trace the patterns. I figure that much you would know. So I'm just going to give you my seam allowance measurements for the pieces. Okay, so the center back, the back neck, the armhole will all be a 1/4 inch. The shoulder seam will be a 1/2 inch. Remember to mark your patterns with the pattern piece, the cut amount of how many pieces you'll be cutting out, and the pattern number. Just an FYI, I did not add seam allowance to that S-curve. I didn't need it. I serged the bottom. If you need to add seam allowance depending on how you finish the bottom. Okay guys, so here are the front pieces. So we have the neck banding, the back neck banding, the right and left armhole banding, and all of the side seams will be a 1/4 inch except for the top of the banding there, where it will be 1/2 inch. The front bodice will be a 1/4 inch all around as well, except for the shoulder seam and the waist line as well as the center front. Okay guys, so follow along in part 2 of this how to create a cover-up tutorial, and don't forget to subscribe and follow me on my social media.